Princess of the had traveled across 7 light years with a single hope burning inside her heart. She had left behind a collapsing world, a dying sky, and a people who whispered prayers into cracked soil. Her mission was simple yet heavy. Find an ally, find a friend, find a future. And so, with trembling breath and a crown that felt too heavy for her young shoulders, she stepped onto Earth. The landing site was a large ceremonial hall built by Earth's leaders. Its marble floors shone like frozen water, reflecting the bright banners hung to welcome an alien guest. But all the brightness could not warm the tight knot inside's chest. She could feel every heartbeat echoing through her ribs like tiny knocks of fear. She walked forward slowly, her long silver veil trailing behind her like a ribbon of moonlight. Her people had taught her that a royal must always walk with calm grace, even when the world is falling. But today, her steps felt fragile, as if sorrow clung to her ankles. Human nobles stood in rows along the hall. Their jewel-lined robes glimmered, their expressions stiff with forced politeness. Some watched her with curiosity, others with suspicion. A few whispered behind their fans, not even hiding their judgment. Lifted her chin, she forced a small, hopeful smile. She needed them to see strength, not fear. "Honored leaders of Earth," she began, her voice clear but soft. "My world is dying. Our oceans drain into deep fractures. Our forests burn without fire. We have searched the stars for help, but every door has closed." She paused, swallowing a tremor in her throat. "I ask not for riches or power. I ask only for refuge and an alliance to save what remains of my people." Her plea floated through the hall like a feather, light, delicate, easily brushed aside. The first noble to answer was a tall woman in a violet cloak. "Princess," she said politely, "Earth cannot shelter every troubled world. We have our own burdens." Another noble stepped forward, a stern man with steel eyes. "And we cannot risk angering other alien factions by involving ourselves in interstellar conflicts." A younger noble scoffed. "And how do we know her arrival is not a trap? She could bring war to our doorstep." Their words hit like tiny blades. She tried to speak again, but new voices joined the rejection. "Earth does not need this risk. We cannot afford her people. This is not our problem." The chamber grew colder with every comment, felt her hands slowly curl against her dress. She had expected hesitation, but not cruelty, not this overwhelming refusal. Her vision blurred for a moment. She lowered her eyes to hide the sting of tears. "Do not break," she reminded herself. "A princess does not break." But inside, her hope dimmed. She bowed her head respectfully, though her heart cracked quietly. "I understand," she whispered. "I apologize for troubling." Before she could finish, the back door of the hall suddenly creaked open. The sound echoed through the chamber like a stray drop of rain in a silent desert. Every noble turned sharply. A man stepped inside, dusty, tired-looking, clearly not a noble. He wore a simple jacket smeared with grease, and his boots were scuffed from long work. He looked completely out of place in the shining hall. His eyes scanned the room, confused at first. Then they fell on Small, trembling slightly, surrounded by cold rejection. He didn't hesitate. He walked forward, ignoring the angry stares of the nobles. When he reached her, he paused only long enough to meet her eyes. There was no fear in his gaze, only understanding, only kindness. Then slowly and firmly, he knelt before her. Gasps spread across the hall, even froze, unsure if this was real. The man bowed his head and said in a gentle voice, "If you came seeking help, I will offer mine." Stared at him, stunned. A stranger, an ordinary human, had shown her more respect than all the nobles combined. And in that single moment, her dying hope flickered back into life. Elias Ward, the human who knelt before her, looked like any other man in the outer districts, calloused hands, worn jacket, and eyes that had seen more struggle than comfort. But in that hall, amidst the whispers and cold glares of nobles, he seemed larger than life. Could not look away. For the first time since stepping onto Earth, she felt that maybe hope was not a fragile thing. It could be real, solid, and human. "I don't know much about your people," Elias said softly, rising to his feet. His voice carried warmth, and yet there was strength in it that silenced the nobles' murmurs. "I don't speak for kings or councils. I only know what is right. You are in need. That is enough for me." Blinked, shock, gratitude, and disbelief swirled inside her. No one had ever offered help so freely, without calculation, without fear. Even her own advisors on distant worlds would have demanded a price first. And here, on a strange planet, a single human risked everything just to offer kindness. The nobles whispered furiously. Some were outraged. Others tried to mask their unease behind polite gestures. "This man is a commoner," one whispered to another. "He cannot make promises on Earth's behalf." Elias ignored them. His gaze never left. "I cannot give you armies or wealth," he said gently, "but you will not stand alone while I can help you." His throat tightened. She had spent countless nights staring at dying stars, wondering if anyone could ever care. And now, in a dusty hall on Earth, she discovered someone who did, not because of protocol or diplomacy or obligation, but because it was human to care. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Why do you offer this? You do not even know me." He smiled faintly, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "I know what it feels like to be alone," he said simply. "And I know what it feels like to be ignored when the world is in trouble. I will not let that happen to you." Felt tears prick her eyes. They were not tears of fear or sadness, but relief. Somehow, in this ordinary human, she saw the reflection of what her people had always dreamed of: courage without arrogance, loyalty without chains. You are brave," she whispered. He shook his head. "I am not brave, I am human, and humans help when they can." The simplicity of his words struck her harder than any elaborate speech could. In a room of gilded nobles, she realized that true bravery was not in power or status. It was in standing for what was right when no one else would. For the rest of the afternoon, walked beside Elias as he led her out of the grand hall. They passed through quiet streets, the tall towers of the city reflecting sunlight like mirrors. Nobles and officials watched from balconies, curious and skeptical, but Elias ignored them all. He talked to her about simple things: food she could eat on Earth, how humans built machines, the quiet beauty of a park where children played. His voice was steady, grounding, a tether to a world that had seemed chaotic and cold. Laughed at a small joke he made about fixing a stubborn engine. It was the first time in months she had laughed without fear. She realized that human life, though simple, held moments of warmth she had almost forgotten existed. When they reached a small, dimly lit workshop, Elias gestured toward a wooden stool. "This will be home for now, not much, but it's safe, and you're welcome here." Looked around. The room smelled of oil and metal, and the walls were lined with tools. It was humble. It was ordinary. But somehow it felt more royal than any palace she had ever visited. More important, it was alive with the intention to protect her. She knelt for a moment, not in submission, but in silent gratitude. "I do not know how to repay you," she murmured. "You don't need to," Elias replied, his voice calm. "Being here is enough. That's all that matters." That night sat on a wooden stool beside a small lantern. The city lights flickered outside, distant and indifferent, but inside the workshop, warmth filled the space. She realized that she was no longer just a desperate princess from a dying world. She had a companion, a human who did not hesitate, who did not judge, who had simply chosen to care. And for the first time since leaving her home planet, allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she could belong. Days passed slowly in the small workshop where had taken refuge. Outside, the city hummed with life, indifferent to the arrival of a princess from the stars. Inside, however, the air was warm, filled with the steady rhythm of Elias at work and the soft glow of lanterns that chased away the shadows. For the first time in months, felt a sense of calm she had almost forgotten existed. Elias moved with careful precision, fixing machines, tightening screws, and adjusting levers. Watched him, fascinated by how something so simple to a human could create order out of chaos. She tried her hand at passing him tools, fumbling awkwardly, and he laughed, a soft, genuine sound that made her heart flutter. It was strange, she realized, how laughter could feel so powerful. It had the ability to erase fear, if only for a moment. "You're holding the wrench upside down," Elias said, smiling but patient. "Here, let me show you." Followed his instructions, careful not to spill the small oil bottle on the floor. When she finally managed it correctly, Elias clapped lightly. "See, you can do this. You're learning faster than you think." She laughed, a sound that surprised her own ears. "I never imagined I would learn human work," she said softly. "It is comforting, steady." Elias shrugged. "It's not fancy, but it keeps life moving. Sometimes that's enough." Over the next few days, they shared small adventures that reminded of life beyond royal duties and starships. Elias took her to a street market, showing her how to taste Earth's strange foods, crispy bread, sweet fruits, and steaming liquids humans called coffee. Giggled as she burned her tongue on the first sip. He taught her how to ride a bicycle in a quiet park, holding her steady as she wobbled along the paths lined with green trees. Through every small experience, realized that trust was a quiet miracle. She had trusted her advisors, her bodyguards, her own instincts, and yet time and again betrayal had followed. But with Elias there was no expectation, no hidden agenda, only steady eyes and a willingness to stand beside her. And that was more powerful than any throne or army. Yet worry never left her entirely. Rumors whispered like wind through the streets. The alien princess is hiding with a human. She could bring danger. She could feel the weight of both her worlds pressing down, her dying planet and this fragile, vibrant human world that she had only just begun to touch. One evening, while the sun dipped low, painting the sky in orange and pink, asked quietly, "Elias, what if they come for me? What if my people find me here and see me with you?" Elias paused, leaning on a workbench, and met her gaze. "Then we face them, together. You are not alone anymore. Not with me beside you." His voice was steady, unwavering. Felt a lump in her throat. It was not just protection she felt. It was something deeper, a connection she had never expected to find on a world so strange to her. She had been rejected by nobles, ignored by leaders, and dismissed by diplomats. Yet here, in a simple workshop filled with oil, tools, and the scent of Earth's air, she felt seen for the first time. That night stayed awake, staring at the small lantern that flickered shadows across the walls. She thought of her planet, her people, and the impossible hope of survival. But she also thought of Elias, kneeling before her not out of duty, not out of fear, but simply because he chose to care. A warmth spread through her chest. Perhaps Earth could be more than a temporary refuge. Perhaps humans, with their simple courage and surprising compassion, could teach even a princess something she had long forgotten: hope. And for the first time in a long while, allowed herself to imagine a future that was not only about survival, but about trust, laughter, and small, precious moments that might one day become a home. She drifted to sleep that night with the quiet certainty that no matter what storms were coming, she would not face them alone. Not with Elias by her side. The peaceful days in the workshop ended abruptly one evening when the sky above the city darkened unnaturally. Had been teaching Elias a song from her home world, the soft melodies of her people, when a deep rumble shook the streets. At first, they thought it was thunder, though the storm had not been predicted. Then the glow appeared, a crimson light that painted the clouds red, reflecting in the glass towers of the city. Froze, her heart sank as she recognized the insignia on the approaching ships, her own people, but not under her command. Her chest tightened with dread. "Elias, they are coming," she whispered, voice trembling. "The rebels, my people, they've followed me." Elias took a deep breath, stepping close, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "We'll face them, together." His calmness clashed sharply with the fear swirling in her mind, and yet it gave her courage. Outside, sirens wailed. Citizens looked up, pointing at the sky as massive ships descended like predatory birds. Earth's officials scrambled in panic, sending military alerts, but none could predict how to handle the sudden appearance of alien warships. The nobles who had dismissed before now stared at her with a mix of fear and realization. His heart ached as she saw familiar ships from her home, a fleet of rebels who sought power rather than survival. They had come to seize her, to claim secrets, and to punish her for leaving. Their commander's voice boomed through the city's loudspeakers, demanding her surrender. "I must go," said her voice low, almost shaking. "I cannot let them hurt Earth for my mistakes." Elias stepped in front of her without hesitation. "You will not go alone," he said firmly. "If they want to fight, they will face both of us." Stared at him, astonished. No human had ever stood against an alien fleet. No one in the Hall of Nobles had offered to protect her. Yet this ordinary man, covered in dust and grease, faced the unknown with nothing but courage and determination. "They will kill you," she said, fear and worry breaking through. "You do not belong in this battle." "And I cannot stand aside while you face it alone," Elias replied. His voice carried an unshakable resolve that made her chest ache with admiration and guilt. "I am here because I choose to be. You are not just a princess from another world, you are someone who deserves help." The first shuttles landed, their metal claws tearing into the earth, sending up dust clouds. Rebels poured out, their armor glinting, weapons aimed, and Elias had no shield but the workshop itself. Yet as the first footstep of an enemy soldier echoed through the street, Elias grabbed a length of chain and a piece of metal piping. "We'll make do with what we have," he said simply, as if strategy came naturally to humans even without formal training. Watched him and realized something she had never fully understood. Humans were small, fragile, and limited compared to beings, but they were unpredictable. They fought with cleverness, with courage, with sheer heart. And sometimes that was stronger than weapons or fleets. She clenched her fists, taking a deep breath. She would not run, she would not hide. Together with Elias, she could meet this threat. He had shown her the meaning of trust, and now trust would become their weapon. Outside, the first battle began. Sparks flew as metal struck metal. Shouts filled the air, and the crimson sky bore witness to the courage of one human and one alien princess standing together against overwhelming odds. Realize then that hope was not fragile. It could burn brightly, even in the darkest storm. And as long as Elias was by her side, she would not face this alone. Not today, not ever. The streets trembled as the rebel soldiers advanced. His heart pounded in her chest like a frantic drum. She had fled her world to save her people, yet now she feared she had brought danger to this new home. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to surrender. But Elias stood firm beside her, unshaken, as if the weight of the entire fleet could not push him down. The first wave of rebels reached the workshop. Their armor was polished and sharp, their weapons humming with energy unfamiliar to any human technology. Commander, the leader of the rebels, stepped forward, his presence commanding and terrifying. He was taller than any human, his eyes glowing faintly red, and his voice carried authority that made the street fall silent. "You have no place here, princess," said, his words slicing the air. "Come with us, or the world you protect will burn with your defiance." The nobles who had rejected now watched in stunned silence from behind barricades. Some whispered prayers, others held their breath. None dared step forward. Elias, however, did not flinch. He gripped a metal pipe, standing like a wall between and the alien commander. "She is under my protection," he said, voice steady and unwavering. "And you will not touch her." His laugh was harsh, mocking. "A human dares defy me? Your species kneels to power, not to honor." "I kneel only to what is right," Elias replied calmly, his eyes locked on the commander. "And I will not step aside for tyranny." Felt her chest tighten. She had never seen anyone confront an army without fear, and yet here was Elias, standing with nothing but courage and the certainty of his choice. His defiance was not born of arrogance or recklessness. It was born of humanity, a strange and stubborn belief that even one person could matter. The rebels surged forward, weapons raised, but Elias moved with a fluid precision she could not understand. He dodged, pushed, and created barriers from debris, using the environment like an extension of his will. Realized that he did not fight because he wanted glory, he fought because he could not allow injustice to win. She stepped forward beside him. Her hands glowed faintly with the power of her people, a shield ready to protect rather than destroy. Together, they formed an unlikely alliance, human ingenuity and alien grace. Sparks flew as metal clashed, and the street became a chaotic dance of courage and desperation. Growled, frustrated that this tiny human and a lone princess could hold his army at bay. "You cannot stop us both," he roared. "Perhaps not," Elias admitted quietly, "but I can make you think twice." His heart swelled with admiration. She had expected the humans to cower, to flee, to serve their leaders without question. But Elias had shown her something far stronger than obedience. He had shown her loyalty, bravery, and the quiet power of conviction. For the first time, she understood what her people had often about humans. They were small, fragile, and limited, yet capable of immense courage. They could rise when the odds were impossible, not because of magic or technology, but because of heart. The rebels faltered under their unyielding defense. Soldiers hesitated, confused by the unpredictable tactics of Elias and the focused energy of. Their calculated assault could not anticipate a human who fought for love and justice, a princess who refused to surrender. In that moment, felt something shift inside her. She was not a victim. She was not powerless. She was a princess fighting alongside a human who had chosen to kneel before her, and together they were unstoppable in a way no army could predict. And as the crimson sky cast long shadows over the city, realized the truth. It was not starships, not titles, not nobility that defined power. It was courage, loyalty, and the willingness to stand for what is right, even when the world said it was impossible. Elias glanced at her briefly, eyes fierce yet calm. "We can do this," he said simply. She nodded, letting her fear melt into resolve. Together they would face the storm, not as princess and stranger, but as allies, two souls who had found strength in each other when the rest of the world had turned away. The rebel forces had pressed forward relentlessly. The city streets, once quiet and ordinary, had become a maze of debris, smoke, and chaos. His chest pounded with fear, yet alongside it surged a strange, steady strength. Elias never wavered. Every time a soldier charged, he blocked, pushed, or improvised a trap, never stopping to calculate the odds. His courage was relentless and felt it anchor her trembling heart. Elias shouted over the din of metal and energy, "We can use the workshop. We know it better than they do." She nodded, eyes wide but determined. Together they darted through alleys, slipped through hidden corridors, and led the rebels into improvised traps, chains falling, doors slamming, sparks flying from short-circuited panels. Every obstacle was simple, yet unpredictable. Humans had a way of using ordinary things with extraordinary cunning. Had never seen her star-born elegance paired with human ingenuity in such harmony. But the rebel commander was relentless. He tracked them with uncanny precision, his armored soldiers closing in with measured steps. Could feel her energy fatting, the strain of shielding herself and Elias threatening to overwhelm her. She had never feared her own power before. It was always something to protect her people. But now, under the red sky, every surge of her light felt like it could consume her, and the thought of harming Elias made her pause. "Stay behind me," she cried instinctively as a squad of soldiers cornered them in a narrow street. "No," Elias replied, gripping a pipe in both hands. "We face this together, trust me." The first wave of attackers collided with them, metal against improvised barricades, energy weapons sparking off the walls. Moved gracefully, using blasts of protective energy to shield them both, while Elias' clever traps disoriented their opponents. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the smell of burnt metal filled the air. Appeared at the end of the street, towering, red eyes glowing. "Step aside, princess, or your companion dies," he warned. His heart skipped. She knew Elias' strength was human, not. He could not survive a direct strike from. She pushed him behind her instinctively, her hands trembling as she prepared to strike with her full power. "Wait," Elias' voice broke through the fear. "You don't fix the world by destroying yourself. Trust me, we fight smart, not reckless." Her hands hovered, glowing faintly, and she felt the truth in his words. Courage was not just about facing enemies. It was about protecting life, even when the enemy was more powerful. She lowered her energy slightly, blending strategy with restraint. Together, they could hold off not by sacrifice, but by cleverness, trust, and unity. Shield expanded, guiding soldiers into traps Elias had set with skill and precision. Pipes swung, sparks blinded, and debris blocked paths. Every move was synchronized, instinctively, as if their two hearts and minds were connected in battle. Hissed in frustration, "You cannot stop me both." "Yes, we can," Elias shouted, voice steady as the red sky above them. "Because we fight for something worth protecting, not just power." For a moment the commander hesitated. The soldiers faltered. And in that pause realized the true lesson humans had taught her. Courage could be quiet, clever, and unstoppable when it came from love and loyalty. As the rebels reeled from their unyielding defense and Elias shared a brief glance. No words were needed, only trust, Only resolve, only the knowledge that together they could face even an empire. The battle had finally slowed. Smoke curled into the crimson sky, and the streets bore the scars of the confrontation: shattered glass, scorched walls, and twisted metal. His chest heaved as she lowered her glowing hands, exhausted but alive. Elias stood beside her, his clothes torn and hands smeared with soot, but his eyes shone with the same calm determination she had admired from the beginning. His forces had retreated, their commander snarling as his ships lifted off. Earth had survived not because of armies or alliances, but because a human and an alien princess had refused to bow to fear. The nobles who had once rejected her now stared with awe, some whispering words of apology, others simply silent in disbelief. Looked at Elias, the man who had knelt before her when the world had turned away. She realized then that all the rejection she had faced, every dismissive glance, every cold refusal, had led her to this moment. Not to a palace, not to armies, not to treaties, but to a human heart willing to stand with her, unflinching. You saved more than just me," she said softly. Her voice trembled with emotion she had long kept hidden. "You saved a part of my world, and now you've saved me." Elias shrugged, a faint smile on his soot-streaked face. "I didn't save a world. I just stood beside someone who needed help. That's all any of us can do." Shook her head, a tear sliding down her cheek. "It is more than that. Because of you, hope exists again, not just for me, but for both of our worlds. You chose to care when no one else would. You made the impossible possible." For a long moment, neither spoke. Around them, the city began to stir again. Citizens peeked from behind doors, whispering about the alien princess and the human who had an empire. Children pointed at with wide eyes, imagining the power she possessed. And she realized something astonishing. This planet, with all its imperfections, could be home. "Where will you go now?" Elias asked finally, his voice quiet, wary of breaking the fragile peace. Looked up at the sky, still tinged with red from the retreating ships. She thought of her dying planet, of the people she had left behind, of the choices she had made, and of the man who had knelt for her when the rest of the world turned away. "I will speak with the leaders," she said slowly, "but my first home here, my first refuge, was with you." She stepped closer and took his hand. "I will stay where my heart found courage, not just shelter." Elias' grip tightened, warmth spreading through him. "Then we face whatever comes together," he said simply. Smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that lit her silver eyes. It was a smile of relief, of trust, and of love, not just romantic, but the love of two beings who had saved each other from despair. In the weeks that followed, Earth's leaders approached with tentative respect. They offered treaties, protection, and careful assistance to her people, but continued to live simply beside Elias in the workshop that had become her sanctuary. Ships were repaired, supplies sent, and communications built, not through power or titles, but through cooperation and heart. She would return to her people eventually, but she knew she would never forget what she had learned on Earth. Courage was not about being unafraid. It was about standing up when fear threatened to paralyze you. Strength was not about armies or weapons. It was about loyalty, compassion, and trust. And the one lesson that them all, that a single act of kindness could change everything. All the nobles had turned her away. All the leaders had refused. All the world had seemed cold and indifferent. But one human man had knelt before her, without hesitation, without calculation, without fear. And from that moment, two worlds had hope. Looked at Elias once more, feeling a surge of gratitude so strong it almost made her knees weak. "You chose me," she whispered, "even when no one else did." "I chose what was right," Elias said softly, "and you were worth it." The stars above glimmered faintly through the clouds, and for the first time in what felt like forever, believed that home was not just a place, it was a choice, and she had chosen wisely. Together, human and princess, they stood against the shadows of fear, knowing that courage, compassion, and trust were stronger than any empire. And the future, fragile yet brilliant, waited for them to build it, side by side.